Got it. So hopefully everybody is seeing a slide and not my notes. Yeah, okay, great. All right, thank you. Thank you, Corrado. Once again, it's super exciting to be with this group. My name is Zeina, and I'll be talking about a framework that we use at Spark Engine. It's a core framework called the 3 problem levels. And essentially, this is all about framing problems for product innovation. So it's really an approach of how to dig into problems beyond the surface and try to increase your chances of developing more innovative solutions and sparking innovative thinking on your team. And as we know, we say this is sort of the business, but essentially it's for not just product managers, but the entire product team, right? Solving the right problem is our #1 job at the end of the day. And so this is just one of the frameworks that really helps us kind of key in and focus on that. Before we start, I'll just do a quick introduction for those of you who don't know me. My name is Zeina Zeitouni. I am out here in New York City. I am a senior product manager for a startup, a hypergrowth startup actually called Omni. And it's an investment analytics platform doing really interesting things in a space that's pretty uncharted. So I actually use this framework a lot with my team and in consulting as well. It's seen a lot of success. I'm also a co-founder of the Spark Engine program, and I am a trainer in all things product management innovation. We work on helping teams utilize a toolbox and frameworks to really, I call it collaborative frameworks for sense making. So it's all about how we approach problems, how we think about things. And what I also love about this group and Corrado and the team here is that it's really about mindset and the come from and how we approach product development. Prior to that, I did a lot of different things. I worked at Capital One, Wells Fargo, another startup called Apartment List. I co-founded and founded a couple of startups as well back in the day, and a international development program in the developing world, in Afghanistan specifically. So a little bit of a diverse background, and I believe that that's kind of really helped me contribute to how we think about some of the frameworks that we'll present today. All right, so let's get into it. So what are the 3 problem levels? Essentially, when we talk about 3 problem levels, it's a way to sort of kind of make sense of where you are in the process and how deeply you understand your problem. A level 1 problem, for example, is what we call a starting problem. This is where most teams operate. And what I mean by most teams operate, it's sort of the starting problem that we get. Our customers are, tired of waiting in line to go to the bank. That's a level 1 problem, right? It's a place where most people start, and then they come up with ideas to try to solve the starting problem. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, in this framework, we're really trying to drive innovation. So we're saying, we want to take an expanded view, which means that we go in to what we call the problem space, and that's a level 2 problem space. And this is where we get an expanded understanding of our problems, where we explore opportunities from various perspectives and start to develop a wider view and more of a unique perspective that is more insightful around our problem space. Now, a level 3 problem is what we call the space for innovation. This is a space where you're really going to spark different types of thinking within your team, because a level 3 problem is something that is focused and reconstructed as a meaningful problem. And so what we mean with that is that this is a really deep understanding of perhaps your original problem or some manifestation of that original problem that is very, very vivid, that is insightful and meaningful in a way that gets you to ideate and spark more innovative thinking for that problem. So I'm going to start with an example. I use this image of an ATM horror movie. This movie actually exists. But essentially, let's just say we're all working for a bank. I've worked and consulted with multiple banks before, and this always seems to be an issue around the ATM, right? Customers are saying, it can be scary to go to the ATM. It can be dangerous. I don't feel safe. It takes too long. So, as a team, we're going to try to think about like, how do we solve this problem? Our problem here is that ATMs are not safe enough. So what most of us do is say, great, ATMs are not safe enough. This seems like a really nice, meaty problem for us to solve for our customers. We want to make them safer. So what we do is we jump in and we say, okay, how are we going to make these ATMs safer? And we come up with ideas. So what's illustrated here is that we're going from our level 1 problem, which is ATMs are not safe enough, to let's come up with ideas on how to make ATMs safer. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. And you can make really powerful, incremental, useful changes and solutions doing work in this way. However, it's not quite ripe for innovation. And I think that that's sort of the point that I want everyone to get here, is that, working from a level 1 problem and jumping into solutions right away is a perfectly fine thing to do, but it is also an incremental thing to do. So what are some ideas that we can come up with for this problem? Here's entry gates, right? A lot of banks do this, right? They say, entry gates are helping people feel more secure because they have to go through a gate and they go into a room and there's more privacy and security. No problem. Almost every single bank has addressed the safety issue in this way. Same here. Another idea, mirrors let you see who's behind you. This is great. It's an improvement to an existing solution, which means it's incremental, right? This does solve the problem of ATMs are not safe enough. It gives them a little bit of a sense of like, they know who's behind them and people feel a little better. However, it is incremental and it's an existing solution. So, I say the word incremental and innovation all the time. And, so what does it mean? So to us, Valerio and I at Spark Engine, we actually really like this definition of innovation. It's a new way of creating value by solving a meaningful problem measured by a change in human behavior. So the key words here and the things that I really think are the sticking points, if nothing else, is that we're creating value, we're solving a meaningful problem, and we're generating some kind of human behavior change. Thinking about solutions, improvements, and problems from this lens makes it feel a little bit different. So before we jump in, I want everyone, if you have a piece of paper or something lying around, a notepad or anything, take that piece of paper and I invite you to draw these 5 circles. And maybe put a line in the middle as well. As you're doing that, on one side, I guess it would be your left side, put down problem space, and on the right side, put down solution space. So in the first circle, write the word discover. This is a framework that our entire program as Spark Engine actually hinges on. We call the 5 dimensions of innovation. And the first dimension of innovation in this framework we call discover. And discover is essentially the space where you go in, where you're trying to look at, what problems you're trying to solve, who are you solving them for, you're trying to understand your market a little bit better. And essentially you're going into and coming out of the dimension with the answer to the question, what is the problem? So coming out of that, you go into define. This is the second dimension of innovation. It's one thing to discover a problem, right? There is no shortage in all of our companies of things that we can work on and things we can solve that are interesting, that we can understand. But coming into define means we're going to come out with a really clear understanding of what our problem is and how we may approach actually solving it. And that goes into design. And design is the piece of the framework that is kind of the bridge between your problem space and your solution space. And when you come out of design, you're really answering the question, what is our solution? And if you see, so much effort and so much time is actually spent in the problem space before we ever get to a solution. And this is super critical for innovative thinking and approaching things from the innovation lens. coming out of design, we go into what we call drive. This is where we're driving the actual product development, where we're incrementally developing, or we're developing, more iteratively. And this team is sort of the professionals in this space. But essentially, you're driving that development of the solution or the initial solution that you had in mind. And you're, sorry, wrong way. And you're coming out of that and you're saying, okay, now we're delivering. How are we, we've designed this thing, how are we validating our outcomes? And then how are we taking that, learning from it, and continuing on iteratively, what did we learn? And you kind of go back and do the whole thing again. So I present this framework only to say that this problem level framework falls within the define stage. You can definitely use it in Discover. This is not a step-by-step by any means. This is it's not a process. It is a framework. It's an approach. It's a way to think about something, and it's a toolbox. So this toolbox that we'll talk about today is essentially in define, but also can be used in Discover. And it's definitely focused on the problem space of the framework. Any questions on this? I think I'll pause. Do you have any questions, Corrado, before I go on?
No,
Okay.
I cannot see. Please go ahead.
All right. So let's go back to our ATM example, right? With that in mind, let's think about, okay, well, how do we kind of approach this problem from this framework perspective? So the first question we ask is, okay, what is our level 1 problem with the ATM example? Basically that ATMs are not safe enough. This is great, and this is useful, and it generates a lot of interesting solutions, but the chances of those solutions being innovative in any way is actually pretty low, because it's just going to present with a lot of really incremental changes that solve that problem. Now, let's just say we don't jump into solution space and we say, okay, great, we have this level 1 problem. How do we now take that and expand our understanding into level 2? What are some different ways to look at this? The idea here is that when you go into your problem space, you're looking for opportunities, you're looking at things from the customer perspective, you're looking at actual maybe literature, things in the market, competitor, anything that is going to give you insight and a different view into what is happening in your problem space, and you're really going to try to uncover some insights. So an example of a level 2 could be, I like to use how might we statements to frame level 2 problems. So if you're familiar with those from design thinking, that's a really great activity to do for level 2 problems, but they could be anything. They don't need to be questions. In this case, for these examples, presenting some how might we statements. We look into the problem space. Okay, how might we help parents who are in a rush get cash quickly and safely? That's different than ATMs don't feel safe enough. How might we help people who work late night hours bank more safely? How might we make getting cash as easy and safe as getting a ride via Uber? How might we help customers get cash without an ATM? So we can go on and on, but again, kind of jumping into the problem space and starting to expand our thinking, looking at the humans maybe that we are going to be impacting, looking at the market, looking at maybe adjacent things, what's happening, and then framing opportunities and problems in the problem space in different ways. So that's a level 2, that's the expanded understanding. The next step is then to reframe the level 2, now your newer understanding of your problem space, into something that actually helps your team develop a deeper understanding. Level 3s they're meaningful problems, they're insightful, and they're vivid descriptions. When you read a level 3 problem, you can picture it. You see in very deep context what it is that you're trying to solve and for who you're trying to solve it for, and then what the consequence or impact of that problem is. So before you jump into solution space, having a level 3 problem really does give your team a sense of not deeper understanding, but it does spark thinking that goes in a very different direction than if you were to start with level 1. So how do you do that? Spark Engine developed this canvas, call it the level 3 problem canvas. And essentially it has 6 components. A level 3 problem, something that is meaningful, that is insightful and vivid, that opens the door to more innovative thinking, usually has these 6 things. The first is context. What situation is the problem happening in? What triggered this problem? There has to be a human actor or a customer, some user, a person who is experiencing this problem. Is there a specific group of people maybe that this problem harms more than others? Oh, I did that twice. Ignore me. All right, the fourth one is experience. What are they actually experiencing? What are the symptoms that are manifesting through this? The fifth one is emotional impact. What is the actual emotional reaction? I like to, say attaching this enables you to not only think about more delightful ways, but to really keep that human-centered thinking throughout your solutioning as well. So things like anxiety, stress, worry, insecurity, frustration, fear, those are always sort of in the crux of any problems that humans are experiencing. So it's important to sort of capture that when you're looking at your problem. And then the last one is, what's the consequence or measurable impact? What is actually the consequence of this problem happening to the person? Are they required to spend a lot of time or money? Are they losing something? If you have something measurable, that's even better. Is there extra work? Is there resources? And that sort of also helps you sort of paint that vivid picture and understand, the impact that this problem is having on your human actor. So what does that look like? So going back, again, we said our level 1, most people operate, it's the starting problem. Level 2, expanded view, is where you have multiple opportunities and different ways and perspectives of looking at something in your problem space. Level 3 is the focused, the reconstructed, and what we call the meaningful problem that's really going to spark innovation. In our example, where we started was, ATMs are not safe. Sorry. All right. ATMs, customer complained that ATMs are not safe again. We went into level 2 and we came up with how might we statements. We looked at different things. We said, how might we help customers get cash without an ATM? How might we help them work late night hours more safely or bank more safely? How might we help people get cash as easy as getting an Uber, things like that. So we explored the problem space a little bit. You probably, just even by thinking about it, have a lot of ideas there. And then we said, we're going to reconstruct this. We're going to use the canvas and start to think about how do we make this into a nice, meaningful, meaty, solution-ready type of problem. And so this is one way to do it. So single parents of young kids living in the suburbs who hire handy workers and contractors for odd jobs and chores around their house need an easy way to pay cash for their work. They often don't have enough cash on hand and need a quick way to get money without leaving their children unattended. Making runs to the ATM at any hour, day or night, can make people feel anxious and insecure. Finding an ATM, getting their kids in and out of the car, keeping awareness while getting cash can be time consuming. And they feel like they are taking a risk. Paying with alternate means can cost excessive fees or small jobs that it's just not worth it for the contractors. So a lot of them, they just, they want you to pay them in cash. Getting cash in these situations should not be harder than getting a ride. So as you can see, maybe as I was reading that, you can envision it, right? You can see, you have a vivid picture of what is happening, who the person is, what the consequence of their problem is, how they're experiencing their problem. And it's not that ATMs are not safe. There is this nice, meaty, meaningful problem here that we could actually solve. Questions? I'm going to stop for a second. I see some things in the chat, but I'm not sure if they're questions.
No, in the chat there are no questions, but actually I have a question that I didn't put in the chat. This approach reminds me the design thinking, divergent, convergent, something like that. Is that a relation with it?
Yes, absolutely. So it's similar in the sense that, we always start in this tool is that we're not just going out and exploring and looking for a problem. What ends up happening on a lot of our product teams is people come to us, some VP, stakeholder, customer success team says, hey, we'd like you to build this thing. People are having trouble with this feature, or we have this idea, we want you to do video chat to solve it. So they're usually coming with a start. I call that a level one, a starting problem. And for us as product teams, it's always really hard to say, no, that doesn't make sense. Why? And so this framework essentially gives us that language to talk about it. Be like, great, that's a great level one problem. Let's go in and investigate more. So that's flare, right? And design thinking, that's where you go in and you say, okay, I'm going to flare a little bit. I'm going to go do the research. I'm going to talk. I'm going to look at, maybe watch research that's been done already, and then get a better understanding and come out with a really vivid description that is human-centered, that has a measurable impact that I can go now and ideate against. And so, you flare into the problem space, you focus more into a level 3, and then a level 3 is really the only thing that your dev team or resources should be working on when you're thinking about stuff like this. Now, we're not talking about bug fixes or stuff like that, but these are like things that really are going to help to spark them to think about more innovative solutions and something coming out of a level 1.
And are you doing these expansions, the divergence, with the customer? Because you mentioned stakeholders, VP, and what else, but you didn't mention the customer. So I'm asking if this is by purpose or.
Yeah, it's with whoever you have access to, and yes, customers is ideal, but sometimes, in even in on certain SaaS products, right, you may not always have instant direct access to customers. You might have to schedule them in advance. You can go in and explore your problem space with maybe proxy customers or people within your organization, just to like expand your understanding. Ideally, you'd be actually talking to the people impacted, because you're not going to know that, in this case, that people are going to feel like they're taking a risk by running out of the car to go to the ATM with the, like you need to have that real contextual understanding. But yes, expanding your view means multiple perspective, customers included.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Zeina.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So what happened with the ATM? So again, when the way we defined product innovation is, it's a new way of creating value by solving a meaningful problem measured by a change in human behavior. So to us, a meaningful problem is essentially a very descriptive, insightful level 3 problem, right? That covers across all those aspects. A new way of creating value. So I'm sure you've seen this as People's Bank, Capital One did this, various others, where they set up a cashless cash withdrawal. You set up your transaction on your phone, you drive up and you pull the cash without ever having to get out. Or if you do get out, it's just quick. It's like a 5-second thing. You never touch the ATM, you wave your phone, you get your cash and you leave. And so, stuff like that are ways, another way that the one bank solved this, and I won't say is they set it up to where people can go to their pharmacies and get cash instead of actually going in, so they can do it with a checkout person, a cashier, instead of and then they don't have to use it. They can just set it up, go to the cashier, get their cash and leave, and never even have to go to an ATM. So again, had they not asked, how can we help people get cash without an ATM, they would not have arrived at that as a solution. They would be building more mirrors and putting security guards in front of the ATMs, which is great, but it's not super innovative. So that's all I have for you today. Again, this is just one framework. This is our Spark Engine program. We have frameworks and tools across all the 5 dimensions, as I mentioned before. This one we use and define, and a little bit in Discover as well. And continue to sort of add different tools to your toolbox. The way I would like that I implement this is actually doing workshops with the teams. When for level 1 problems, usually I'll just have people like flare and say, okay, what problems are wrong with this feature, or what have you been hearing from customers? And, people will use a Miro board and ideate on, okay, here are all the problems, and we expand into reframe into the problem space. And sometimes within a workshop, we can get to a pretty interesting level 3 problem. Other times we have to go do more research, but it's just a good way to have a language to talk about, your different levels of what you're going to be working on. And that's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Zeina. Yeah, any question? Please unmute and make your question.
I have a quick question. Thank you, Zeina, for a very good presentation. When it comes to solutions, are you proposing solutions at each stage of your 3 problems? So you go to problem 1, then you do solutions, problem 2, do solutions, or do you wait till the end?
You wait till, ideally, if you're trying to drive innovation, you wait till your level 3 before you go to your solution space. Your level 3 problem is going to be the one that you ideate against, and ideating is a solutioning exercise, right? You're trying to come up with ways to solve it. And so, you want to wait till you have, you can have multiple level 3s as well. It doesn't just have to be one, but you want to wait to have, or, until you have something meaningful in the form of a level 3 before you jump to a solution space.
And typically, would you find that the problem 3, the level 3 problems would lead to perhaps more expensive solutions because they are less incremental?
It could, but they could also lead to really simple solutions. Sometimes, framing things in that way, either they say, oh, we're going to go launch a whole new product, or you're going to just change the language on something, instead of saying spend more, we're going to say round up. And that increases people's, saving by 40%. Sometimes it actually helps you come up with something innovative, but very, very simple as well. So it doesn't always, it could result in a very expensive, complex solution, but innovation is not about complex, or it's just really about something that's going to change what people are doing and create value for them in a new way. And so if you, if you deeply understand the problem and can almost visualize it as if it's a movie in your head, your solutions just by default, just by that act, are going to be different, and sometimes very simple, and as simple as a content change or a language change could have miraculous results.
Great. Thank you. In the meantime, just for your information, I see your Twitter account, Zeina, so I connect with you. Any more questions? Please don't be shy.
I have a question.
Yes.
Please, Harun.
Thank you, Zeina, for brilliant presentation, by the way, absolutely exceptional. The question I've got is, you've got level 1 problem and problem space and level 3 problem. Is there a reason why it's not called level 3 problem space?
That's good. Yeah, no, there is a reason, because level 3 is very focused. So Corrado actually touched upon this, and he said, in level 2, you are expanding and you're opening up, right? You're diverging a little bit. In level 3, you're converging around something really specific. So it's really, you can have 2 or 3 level 3 problems, but essentially it should be a very focused problem. And did I skip the canvas? And it should have these elements. I mean, I put human factor twice because it's so important, but it is also a typo. But essentially it should have component of these elements, meaning it's very, very well understood, what it is you're solving for. And I think where most people get hung up on this is that they think by being too specific, they're excluding other things, right? And the risk of that is actually that it's no risk. You actually have an advantage when you get really specific, because the solutions you end up coming up with, even though they're really focused and designed maybe on one particular, type of customer or a particular scenario, they end up actually working for most people, but the solution is focused around a certain type of person, if that makes sense. And that makes it really much more interesting and unique.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Great. We have time for one question. One last question.
And yes, my last name means olive. That is correct in Arabic. Whoever said that in the chat.
Yeah, actually, this helped just to identify your Twitter account, by the way. Anyway, thank you, Zeina. Zeina will share the deck with me, and I will share with you. Okay. So thank you very much, Zeina. I will let you know when the video will be available. And again, thank you for sharing this. It's the second time that we have this this meeting, and I also remember the first time when we had the first session was really, really interesting. And I really love to talk about the product from business perspective, as I mentioned at the beginning. So thank you very much. Our community is absolutely open, and I hope to see you soon next year, okay, with another great talk. Thank you to all of you that joined the session. At the end, we roughly arrived almost 20 people connected, so good. And hope to see you next week. I put a few links in the chat, also the link to the new event. And again, thank you for sharing, Zeina. Thank you for being with us. And have a great evening or afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.